Okay. Hide some pictures. Let's see, remove this one and remove this one. So this is part of the developer program, but it's also for the igniters, intended for the igniters here at Capgemini, because I was asked to kind of give some information about like React and what's next. So that's why I would like to present it for them as well. So I'm trying to do it for both those targets. And I had this code lab last year, but it's hard to get going in the company. So that's why I have my own pet project with the project has done. And already I have done this started. So this is the first part, and the recording from the previous meeting is out on the site. And there's even some notes, so you can kind of go through and see if you want to do the tutorials or kind of check if you actually know how to set up the development environment. Yes, welcome. So, yes. So now it's the build it, which is going through React and development tools. And next time it's going to be more on the deployment part, like how to actually do the testing and merge and deploy and DNS questions and stuff like that. So, okay, so about React and Next, that's the topic this time. And of course, it's like, what is it? What's next? Why TypeScript? What is this components and hooks? And also the question came, can you talk about state management and maybe a little bit about routers? Why do I have this at the bottom here? That's kind of weird. Anyway, can I auto hide that taskbar? Setting?
Or settings, probably. Yeah.
And whatever. I don't like this. Anyway, okay, it's gone. It's gone. Finished. Okay. So these are the topics, but of course I want to ask the question, why React and Next, and why not something else? Because there's so much happening now. So, and I always kind of, in my head, I always go this recasting, and I found that a nice word to re-evaluate what is out there, what's going on, seek understanding. Am I on the right path? I always go through this in my mind. So this is how I am thinking. So you're looking at the trend. This is just Google trend. You can see that React has become one of the dominant front-end frameworks, and you find Angular, Flutter, Vue. I include Flutter because I think that's kind of different compared to the others. Svelte is also very interesting, but you see it's very, there's not many that's using it. Just to kind of make sure, disclaimer in a way, I don't think there is any best framework. I think whatever you need to do, you have to evaluate what is the situation. I used Vue before and I love it. And so many tell me that's much easier and much nicer. If I'm reading the documentation on Svelte, I fall in love with that and so on. So there's no best, but for companies, I would say that React, it's easier to find programmers. And if you are a consultant, if you are a programmer, then it's easier to get a job simply because there are more out there. That's it. So, and I've added this link, so you should follow that because it's quite interesting to go through this survey and all this information about the different technology. So, and this will be online after. So why not Svelte or whatever, X or Y? Actually, HTMX, as they call it now. Svelte is twice as fast as React and easier, apparently. HTMX is basically just a HTML with kind of simplifies everything, they say. I'm not quite sure. And Flutter is, after all, what I like about that is that it works for desktop, mobile, web, and everything. It's really cross-platform and hardly used. Well, actually, it's quite quite a lot of usage in the world because it's a lot of usage in China and India, not so much in America or Europe. So when do you look at something new and say, I want to switch, I want to change because this is so much better and faster or whatever it is. But then you're thinking like, maybe it's immature. Maybe there are retraining costs because you have learned something and now you have to teach everyone something else. And maybe what you have is already set up and you know how to kind of integrate it with the other components or libraries or systems. And now how does it work in Flutter? It's like a new world. So yeah, all in all, you just end up, no, I'm not going to do it. Still, I want to give a short little commentary on the different ones. This is React, and say what you want, but this is so-called a variable, reactive variable defined as a const. So in a way, it doesn't make sense. So if you look at the variable in Svelte, it's just a variable. So much easier. That's it. It does the same thing behind the scene because Svelte uses a compiler. So much easier to read until you realize that even Svelte said that we have to upgrade, and then they make this. I think they've made it easier now, but this is what they had out on their site, saying that Svelte 5 things are getting tricky, so it's going to be a little bit more code to write. So, okay, I'm not sure. HTMX, okay, you're just writing something in the code in HTML. So then you say that when you call increment, then you just change this button. Okay. So it's easier on the front end, but you still have to make some back end because this is replaced by the back end. So what? You need to do Python or you need to do whatever. So, okay, maybe it's easier on the front end, but you still have this connection to the back end. And this is how can I remove this one?
If you just hover away from it, it should go.
No, it's whatever. I'll see if it disappears. So this is Flutter. And as you see, compared to React, it looks more complicated. There's more scaffolding in Flutter because it's class-based. But one of the good things about being class-based is that it is more strict. So it's better when things grow because you have a more system in place. JavaScript is so-called prototype based. So yeah, you can do whatever, less boilerplate, more flexibility, but you also have less performance because the interpreter has to do the checking. Yeah, so there are good parts and bad parts. But then, yeah.
Well, I don't think JavaScript has a compiler, right?
No, JavaScript has an interpreter.
Yeah.
And TypeScript has a compiler.
Yeah.
So then you're back to the compiler. And so you're kind of moving in the direction of a class-based system. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. So
more on that day.
Yeah. So, okay, let's go to React next then. So apparently React is now, I thought it was kind of funny because I normally go to this state of JS, state of JavaScript, and I found out there is actually state of CSS and state of, even state of React is a site because it's been out there so long. I think actually it's more than a decade now, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm not sure. It's definitely we're on React 18 now.
Yeah.
So there's been 18 major versions of React.
Yes. So when they are saying that it has become the dominant, yes, but it's been around for a while, definitely been around for a while. So kind of this is the dominant front-end system. So choose React because it's not immature. choose React because there are no retraining costs, right? That's the main reasons. Except that now you read this update from the React team. And it says here, the entire history of React is making technical mistakes and then fixing them. And then fixing them again. It's like everything is changing. And now you have React 19, where a lot of the things that you have just finally starting to understand, and they are changing it. You don't have to use this anymore. And even this use effect is being changed to just a use, and this complicated forward ref is gone. So you have to do the retraining anyway.
They are. It was all simplification.
It is all simplification.
So that's the nice thing.
Yeah, but when I came into React 2 years ago, it was so different from 4 years ago. Because then they had a class-based system, and then they moved to a functional-based system, and then they introduced these hooks, and now these hooks are totally changed.
Yes. Yeah. Hopefully in the right direction, becoming more simple.
And that is also kind of the comment from people that if you see Svelte had this compiler, and now React has a compiler, so it's doing a lot on that step. Yeah. So I have a love-hate relationship to React still. I'm not hooked yet. But what is it? Okay, so you use it to create a user interface components. And as you see here, you have like a video. So that's the component that you define. And you're just doing that by having a thumbnail component and a like button component. So it's pretty easy. But that's the whole point of it. So in a way, you have HTML elements, and then you can actually, if you want to define something for yourself, HTML has custom elements. So you can go in and define a H1 blog post or blog card. In React, that would be written with capital letters. So there's a little bit of a different way to do it. So you define components that contains it all. I'd like to comment. Yeah, let's take this little sample here with a counter. If you do it with just HTML, that's the HTML, and then you need to add the event listeners and change it. And this is actually done by these custom elements in a better way. So this is the implementation of a custom element. It's quite a lot after all. You have to use this inner text. You have to add this custom event, a dispatch event, and it's complicated. So of course, if you look at React, it's so much easier to define a component. So React makes it easy, but you still need to know the HTML. So just this simplest one, the href. Everybody knows that href for the URL, the target, so you can say if it's going to open up in another window or whatever. And there are more attributes. So did you know about the ping? Did you know that the A tag has a ping? Okay, so you should go and read more about HTML. So definitely go to V3 or V3 schools, and you'll find that there's a lot under these more attributes and global attributes, because these are the elements that you use when you want to implement something in React. So you need to know the basic. There are new elements that have showed up the latest years, like dialogue or pop over or all kinds of stuff. So, but then you also have this problem. Can I use? Because I love this ping, but then yes, no, yes, no. So you have to check if the new features are available. Okay, next, what is next? This is the backend. So we have a client server and different reasons for having, but when you go to React, it says React should have a full stack web application framework. So, and now you create a new component, and it's by default, it's a server component. You actually have to say this is on the client. So, and there are many available as a backend frameworks, but Next is kind of the default one and maybe most used. And once again, it depends. I would say Next, in my opinion, is best if you're making a web application. It's also good for making web pages, but some of the others are more for making web pages. Yeah, and the more strange you go, quick, looks like very nice, and there's so many, but it looks, to me, it looks like if I'm going to make a very fast, good web page, okay, I'll have a look at them. But for web applications, I would feel safe about Next. Yeah.
It's definitely the most used and the most loved. If you look at the statistics of what people would choose.
You showed me this one just now,
yeah.
And this is on Next, and you showed me that if you go down here and see who's using it. So TikTok, Twitch, Netflix, there's a whole lot, Notion. So if you're not sure if this is something that is used now, just go through this list and you'll be amazed. TED Talk has so much nice. Okay. Oops. Okay. Spoiler. Yeah. Okay. Go back into this one. Okay. So next, it gives you all these backend like server components. By default, a page is created on the server and you go to the URL, it's ready. It doesn't have to be built on the client in your browser, it's ready. That's what it does. And you have all these, you can fetch the data on the server. So there's a lot of new features that should have been on the server, and now this is now combined so nicely. One of the nice things is that you actually define the URL just by adding it into a folder. So you create a dashboard and you have /dashboard, and you put in that, you put the different files, page, and then you have /dashboard, and it will show the page. And if there's some error, you will actually have an error page, which is just another file. But all of this is now you can see that you have this server client. So fetching data, access to resources in the back end is all done on the server. And it's only when you do like events in the front end that you need to have a client component. I think one funny thing is that even now you go through the documentation and you'll see page.js. And then you have to kind of, no, I don't want to be in JS. I want to be in TypeScript. So and they have, you can see examples in TypeScript or JavaScript. And I would not recommend JavaScript, but it's like most of the documentation is still in JavaScript. So here's an example of a TSX TypeScript. I'll comment on. The X is because it's using JSX, which is HTML directly. So you can see here it returns and then it has H1, hello. So you're right. It looks like you're writing it directly, but this is being compiled or transpiled into JavaScript. So JavaScript is a notoriously challenging language to optimize, so don't use it. They say recommend enabling strict mode. Don't use any. Use strict mode. So you should use TypeScript TS and TSX, which is the components in with HTML or JSX embedded into it. So why TypeScript? Because it has all these nice features that typically, here is an example. Like if you are in the error in the editor now and you write this code, you don't see the error. But if you had TypeScript checking, it would tell you, you wrote it wrong. Okay. And there are different ways. So they are saying that you can step by step go into TypeScript. I really don't see that happening, because why not just move to TypeScript? You kind of, but if you have a big old project, you have to move it. I see that. But if you start on something, then you're choosing.
Controversially, there are some big projects that migrated away from using TypeScript and now only use JavaScript docs.
Yes.
But those are the people that use TypeScript, understand it very well, and have specific reasons to not use it.
Yeah.
For most people, TypeScript is going to add and catch a lot of errors, a lot of silly mistakes before you put it into your production code and have someone click on a button and have an error when they press on the button.
Yeah.
That's the main strength of TypeScript.
But you're still when you have the ECMAScript defining more and more how you can use the types and the type checking. So JavaScript is evolving in the direction of TypeScript.
Yeah, you're exactly right.
Yeah. So some people prefer to follow that standard way. I understand that in a way.
Yeah, I think they're called type suggestions on ECMAScript.
Yeah, I wonder, like this is a TS. There's actually like annotation you just put on. Yeah. So in a way, you have JavaScript, have to learn JavaScript, TypeScript, and then JSX. So then you're into TSX, and then JSX is then almost HTML, but you can't write class. You have to write class name. You can't write tab index. You have to write the I with a capital I. Little details like that. If not, it doesn't work. And another thing is that in HTML, you're passing around properties like attributes, and you put data. But now with React, you can pass data and functions. So it's more powerful. But you see here, style is then like a double curly bracket. So the first curly bracket is telling you that this is the code, and then the next one is that this is the object. So, and then of course you need to know your HTML and you need to know your CSS. And unfortunately, I have a few slides about CSS because that's also getting complicated. I'll try to skip them fast, and you'll just see that it is complicated, because you would not just write CSS. You would use either some CSS module or Sass, Tailwind. So you start with your global CSS, and now when you create a new default, you get Tailwind, because Tailwind is working both on server side and on client side. So that's what they have chosen on Next. And then, interesting enough, you can define -- variables and use them as a var in your code. And then you have something called @layer utilities, which is a Tailwind thing. Kind of interesting, because if you are using, like I would define a class, button blue, and then I can use Tailwind to say that if I have this class, then it means this code in Tailwind. But the thing is that this button blue is going to be used whether if you later on define end up never using button blue, it's still going to be included in your in your CSS file. But if you put like button red and you put it under a layer, now it's under the control of Tailwind. So if you end up never using that button red, it's going to be removed from the file. And that's the good thing about Tailwind, that it has this tree shaking. It only includes what you're using. But there are some interesting parts of this. So you can go and read this. This is a link to that commentary. Kind of interesting. So there's a lot to learn about, like CSS, and then should you use one of these libraries? Should they? Some of them are only working on the client side, and then you have to think about the server side as well. And like the safe bet is Material UI, and you have a CSS library combined with a component library. So now it's easier. You don't have to create your buttons or tabs or whatever. You just go and pick from there. But how do you use it on the client and the server? So be aware of that and check it out. So you have CSS, CSS module, all this. Just commenting that at the bottom here, you end up with maybe your customer has said that let's go for the Material UI, but then they have their own component library. Like at Equino, you have the EDS, Equino Design System. And then you should basically have a project component library, design system and component library. So the correct way to do it is to make sure that you encapsulate whatever is used, so that if that is changed later on, you have already that definition done. And they say that's not only normal, but a strategic approach for many companies to ensure that future proofing, as they say. So, but CSS is now complicated. Okay. There is one new component library that is kind of different and very popular. So go and listen to what he says about ShadCN. So all the others, you kind of install them. But with this one, you basically have a copy paste. So you get the code into your own code. And that's the whole purpose. You're supposed to have ownership of the code. So this little badge here is basically the function is just return badge. But the implementation is telling me that, first of all, it's using Tailwind. So it has defined some variants as default, secondary, destructive, okay? And it has some interesting Tailwind description of how it's supposed to look. So this is the implementation of it that you can go and change and add new variants if it suits you. But it also tells me that even this, when you have the function badge down here, return div class name, and this, the way they do it with this CN badge variants and so on, you have to understand what they're doing. And you want to do that when you are implementing your own, so you can have your variants. So interesting. But ShadCN is fun. Yeah. So summary of languages, tools, and libraries. Programming language, TypeScript. React, build your own components. HTML. And then find a component library, because it is kind of difficult to define everything yourself or make your component library. CSS, there's a whole lot of things to do. Make sure that the system you choose is also, because you choose a component library or you have to use this in React and Next, you have to make sure that it's also working on your server side. So there are integration guides for this. Okay, so this is the first part, TSX, HTML, CSS. Comment a little bit about the components and hooks. Also kind of annoying for me is that you go and read the documentation. I don't like this way of doing it, as you have a export default const. This is how I define a component. I prefer the other way, where you have a export default function. That's my preference. But when you see it out there, there's so many where you just have this const definition, equal, and then there's another, a little bit difference in the syntax. So whatever. It's confusing to me that you can do it in so many ways.
There is a reason for doing it like that.
What's
You can define a function twice in the same file.
okay?
You can't define a const twice in the same file. Otherwise, it's exactly the same.
What happens if you define a function twice?
If you define function simple component and
Yeah.
you say something, and then you do function simple component again, the
Yeah.
second one, the second one is the one that's used. The first one just becomes dead code.
Oh, okay.
So it's very not very often are you using the same function name in the file
and
twice.
yeah.
But the const provides a slight, when using TypeScript, a slight benefit in terms of it will error if you have done something very stupid.
Yeah.
That's why it shows up everywhere. Function makes more sense semantically.
Yes.
You know what a function is.
Yeah.
Either way, it doesn't really matter. You can do what you prefer.
Okay, interesting. I do wonder if Visual Studio Code will tell you if I have function simple component and I make another one, it would say that that's a mistake. I wonder.
Yeah.
I don't know. But now I finally got the answer. Good. So here's the component with some input and output. I think on the previous one, I had just like you have input as the message. So you can, when you use it, you can send in the message. But here I have the component with value that comes in, but it also passes out a change in the value. So then it's a function that goes back out. And on the right side, you have this other component where you're using it. So down here, you have the simple input component with the value taken in as a, and in this case, I have defined the hook that says input value, set input value, starting with nothing or quote, quote. So this is the hook. But this is the responsive variable. It means that every time this value changes, it's going to be a new rendering of the page. Input and output. And then you have this destructuring. So in this case, I have props as what's being passed in, but I pick out the value. So I have value and non-value. Yeah. On state management, normally you have to think about this property drilling because you have something defined as a count, set count, somewhere in the component. And if you want to use that count further down, you have to pass it down as a component. And if there is a component that doesn't use it, but someone further down uses it, you have to pass it through and it has to pass it up. So that's the property drilling. So you start with this simple use state and then you have to pass these down. But there are many hooks. So there are lots to talk about there. This is not the course. This is just a desperate commentary guide to what to look for. And this use callback, use content, use memo, they're going away. And there's more information being put onto this just use. State management, again, you have the context API, and then you define the context as a component. And then you have to say that there's a provider. So you say, I'm providing you this context, and then you can use it further down. But then you also have the situation where you have another provider. So you have to wrap the provider in a provider. And you said you had like many levels down?
Yeah, in our file somewhere we have 10 or 15 providers.
Yeah. There are ways to make it into one line, but that's also complicated and stuff.
Well, I mean, you're moving it around.
Yeah.
It's 10 lines in one file, but then in another it's one line.
Yeah. So that's it. Yeah. And then we've been using Recoil, but there's also so many new state management tools out there. Recoil is easy enough. You define an atom. So you have like a file that says count state is defined, and then you can have another one as a key to another state. But that's also just like a simple file that you define these states, and then you can just use them anywhere. So then you just say recoil root. So anywhere further down, any component down there can just get it. But you still need this wrapper. So it's very similar after all, just simplified. So more to read, basically. And then there's like a new kid on the block called Signal. Definitely worth to listen to. And Signal, I think, came from Solid, which is also a very popular framework because it's so fast. I think it's the fastest web framework. And it's very similar to React in the syntax, but it doesn't use useState, it uses useSignal. So it would look like this. The count would just be defined once again as a const for some reason when it's a variable. I still don't get that, but you define a signal. But now there's a little bit of change because now you have to use dot value, but you can work on that value directly. You don't have to have another function to do it. The signal is you just use dot value. And in JSX, you don't have to use this dot value. You can just use count because JSX is taking out the value itself. So and this is a different way of doing it because you also avoid the use effect. So mostly all your use effect, and that's also kind of complicated sometimes. When is it affecting what? But these signals kind of go the other way. I change, so whoever uses me, there you are. So also definitely interesting to look at. So short comment about routers. So before everything was routed in the client, it was client single page application. React page was single page application. Yeah. So you're not actually moving around. You're just telling the browser like, I've moved to this page, but you're not moving around. So it's a client-side router. And now you have Next that introduced recently, I think that was 18. No, I'm not quite sure. App router. So built on the React server components. And this is the one that does all this magic about like you have the folder structure and you can define like you can just with the folder, you can name the folder with parentheses and then it's kind of hidden in the structure and you can, there's so much to read about that system.
Yeah, the app router is essentially just an improvement on the existing pages router, which it still used folders for routing.
Yeah.
The app router just gives you some new features, some nice new ways of doing things.
Yeah.
But Next has had like one of the fundamentals to Next is its router in general.
Yeah.
You can still use the pages router if you want.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Pages was one of the first reasons why I started looking at Next.
Yeah.
Yes. What else do I have? Yeah, so now you just and the layout and the nested layout.
Yeah.
So you define layout on one level, and then you have layout on the next level. But this is the list of all the things you can. It's like error handling. You can actually just define a page called error.js or TS or TSX. Maybe TSX because you want some code in that too. So that's all you have to define. Then if there's an error, it will go to that because you're fed up about the boring 404. You can define it yourself. And at the bottom here, I have an example of when you want to define an API, you can just go to route, and then that will be your /API will be your backend. That's it. And you can then use this endpoint. Well, then you can add functions for get and put and post and delete and everything like that. Yes. Data fetching almost done. Just a little comment about that because this is one of the reasons why I now have it on the server side. Because now, before you had all this like rsync function, call the rsync function, and then use query has been improved, make it easier. And then, so you are like thinking like, what is the right way to do it? And then what they're saying now is that when you have these server actions, more powerful, provides type safety. So big words, it's a game changer in web development, because actually I was concerned, like, now you have the client and you have the state in the client and you have the server and you have the state in the server. A lot of it actually goes away because the server is just going to give you the data. So actually there's less problem with the state, according to what someone said. So anyway, there's more to read about it.
I think the important thing with server actions, they are slightly controversial. Some people like them, some people don't. The idea is that you're trying to, or Next is trying to abstract the entire HTTP layer of the application.
Okay.
So you don't have to handle network requests.
Okay.
Which, if it's done well, will make things easier.
Yeah. Conclusion. Okay, time to change? No. React Next is a safe bet. My words. Time to upgrade? Yes, because both is changing and has been changing and it will be changing. So yes, you need to upgrade your skills. There's so much interesting stuff going on. So join the developer program. That's my before I hand it over to you. So I think you have, yeah, there's, go to the slides when I put it out, because then this is linked so you can click on it and see. So it's in the button.
Okay, so
Yeah, okay.
I want. Oh, I've got the camera now.
Okay.
Oh, squeak. Nice.
Great.
So I wanted to talk very briefly about what it looks in practice. Looks like in practice. So we've seen that it's Next is used very often in production applications. And I think when we do these kinds of presentations, we often kind of just look at toy applications and how do we get it to work. And so you don't often see how a more production-like environment looks like. So a little bit of context for this. Outside of my job at Capgemini, I'm part of a founding team for a platform called Happy Dogs. And I like to describe it as the LinkedIn for dogs. The idea is that you as a dog owner or a dog breeder should be able to post information or log information about your dog if you have a dog show that your dog has recently won, or if you want to breed on your dog. We want to provide a platform for that. And we have this website that's available. It can be accessed. Everything is locked behind a pilot feature, but you can register and you can log in. You just won't see anything yet. But it is built with Next, and it's where I've learned everything front end, everything JavaScript, React, and Next. I've been doing this with my amazing partner, who is much better than me at the front end development, and she's done most of all of this. So little shout out. But I can show you what the some of the code looks like for one of our pages. So this here is the app router that was mentioned earlier, and sort of how this translates into a page on screen. So there's quite a few things going on. All of these represent routes that we can access. But to build this page out, the first thing that Next does will be to look at the layout here in the root of app. In this layout, we've defined this navbar up at the top. And this means that this navbar will exist for every single part of the application. And it also won't be re-rendered. So you get some nice efficiency there, and it will persist. It won't flash across the screen. Then it's going to look for any folders. And then this determines the root, as we've seen earlier on in the presentation. So we can see that there's /login. If there was another folder underneath here, it would be, if we had /login/signup, or a folder here called signup, that would be /signup here. And then finally, it'll look for the page underneath that folder. And in that folder, we've defined our login system. And then if we look at a bit deeper into the component that I had on the previous page, this is what renders inside the page. And we've got these JSX elements, which, as you've mentioned, are very close to HTML elements. So this entire section will show the login part. We define the header, the text fields, and then underneath we have the links and the spans. Everything becomes one part of the page. It's very easy to understand, I think, once you decompose it into root, into the lowest level, and you just build it up. We have the button here, and then the image next to it. And then we've built a page. We've put something into a folder. We've called it page. We've said we want a couple of things into it. And now we have a website.
So when you say flex, it means that
Where here, display
the
flex.
first one.
So
it means that if your screen is getting narrow,
yes,
that image is going to go under.
yes.
Yes.
I don't know exactly how we've defined the styling, but the flex definitely allows you to define how big things should be. They should expand. They should get smaller. The flex in general is nice for styling.
Yeah.
It just makes the styling easier. But I think the key point that I kind of wanted to show off was all of this is very intuitive when you're using Next.
Yeah.
You have a folder system that translates to a slash. It's so close to how it's used on Windows. At least I don't know Mac. If you were to type the same thing into your Windows folder, you would get the same thing as you get in your browser. So it's super intuitive. It's super easy to use. At each point in those folders, you get different options for how you want to compose your page. And then for each one of those, you can just build it up with small building blocks to create something that that looked quite good, I think. I will mention this was made with the assistance of AI. If you want to, if you want to jump on the trend, not entirely. There was a baseline and then there was iterations. But we're all using AI tools now, so I guess we're part of the cutting edge company.
Oh, there's also something on Vercel, because I'm using Vercel for deployment.
Yeah.
And you can go to v0.dev, I think it is. So that's the version 0 of an iteration, and you could say, I need a login screen. That's what you type in, and then AI would come with 3 alternatives, and you can just say, I like that code. That's a good starting point.
Yeah, and then you just you go from there and you build it up. Yeah, it's good. But that's it.
Yeah, that's it.
If I click now, I think it would turn black. So
I'll click and see. Nothing happened. Okay.
All right.
That's it. I'll make this funny sound again, and
that's great.
Stop the But I'm kind of interested in seeing what's going to happen with React and Next in the future.
Did you find working with the app, like every time you're doing a route and you have a page?
Yeah.
Did you find that annoying when switching pages?
It is a little bit. So when you're in your VS Code, you have page.
Yeah.
That's slightly annoying.
Yeah.
The thing is, I tend to only work on 2 or 3 pages at a time, and then it's just tap.
Right.
And then I know I'm on, or if I'm working on 2 pages at a time, I have them side by side anyway.
Yeah.
And I think in general, if you're doing things across multiple pages, you should be using a component folder. So you'll modify the component and then you'll check if it works in both pages rather than edit both pages at the same time.
Right.
But yeah, having layout.tsx everywhere and having it being the same thing is slightly annoying for your developer experience, for your DX. But I think it's okay.
Yeah. Would be interesting if they did like route _ page.
Yeah, I think people have asked for something along those lines.
Or page _ whatever.
Yeah. I think
minor gripe.
I think VS Code just needs a way to show the folder it's part of first. Maybe there'll be an extension for that.
Well, thanks, guys.
Yeah.
This was nice.
Let's end it. If I can find the button.
You can go to,
Stop sharing.
and then you
And
go to record and transcribe.
yeah, where?
There
There it is.
Yep.
Okay. Did I record it?
Yep.
Stop.
Stop.
And remove the end.